question. I'm not saying it's not justified. I'm just asking you, where do you go mentally when there's a gap between expectation and behavior? Where do you naturally go? Where does your spouse naturally go? Where do you go? Now, here's what I want you to hear. People who stay in love learn to do this. People who stay in love learn to do this. People who stay in love, either intuitively or by force of habit or however they get there, learn and consistently, regardless of circumstances, they learn to go here. When you find people who are still crazy in love, you will not find couples where there's no gap. There will always be gaps. What you will find are couples who have both decided and learned and made it a habit of assuming, not the worst, but believing and assuming the best. Which means they are, as we're going to see in a minute, generous in their explanation. They, in their mind, come up with an explanation as to why there's a gap, and they're generous in their explanation. Now, years ago, our leadership team read a book called The One Thing You Need to Know by Marcus Buckingham. The One Thing You Need to Know by Marcus Buckingham. And this book is actually a leadership management book. Our leadership team, we go through books all the time together. This was one of the books we went through. It's not a marriage book. It's not a relationship book. It's a management business leadership book. But at the beginning of this book, he's making the point that he's going to make throughout the book, and the point of the book, The One Thing You Need to Know, is that in every discipline, in every field, in every realm of life, there's one principle, and if you know that one principle, you'll be successful. That's his theory. To support his theory, he gives an illustration for marriage, and here's his illustration. He said there was a group of researchers who wanted to study successful relationships. And so they got a group of people together that were considered happy, and they did lots and lots of interviews, and they found a group of people who were very, very happy in their relationship, happily married, who had been together for 10 years or more. And they decided to ask the question, what is the common denominator? What is the one thing? And they assumed, based on previous research, that they knew what the one thing was already. Based on previous research where they had studied a lot of unhappy couples and couples whose relationships eventually fell apart, they discovered that in an unhappy relationship, there was huge misunderstanding between the two parties as to what the other person was like. There was like complete disengagement or a complete disconnect. They didn't understand each other. So they assumed that when they studied these happy couples, they would discover a very deep understanding, a very realistic view, and that the man and the woman would understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. They wouldn't have high expectations because they knew each other so well. They would just say, well, she's not good at that, so I don't expect much. He's pretty good at that, so here's... They expected to find very realistic expectations based on the reality of these two people. What they discovered was the very opposite. When they tested these couples that had been together 10 years or longer, who were considered happy couples, they discovered that, in fact, they had a very unrealistic view of each other. They would give the man, for example, a test, and he would rate himself in certain areas. Then they would give his partner the same test, and she would rate him higher in every single category, higher than he rated himself, and vice versa. That they rated each other higher consistently in all these couples over and over and over in every single category. Their conclusion from the test was that love really is a bit blind. That these happy couples did not have a realistic view of their partner. Here are some of their findings. I just want to read you 3 statements. This is so interesting. A spouse's positive illusion, they used the word illusion, that there was an illusion. The spouse's positive illusion created an upward spiral of love. Now, before you think this is weird, this is exactly what you did when you fell in love. I guarantee you. You thought he was the greatest person in the world. You saw no fault with him. In fact, when somebody would say, well, he's kind of you just covered that over and said, yeah, but... And somebody came to you and said, I'm not sure she's... And you said, yeah, but... You had this illusion that your love was blind, right? And here's what they say. A spouse's positive illusion created an upward spiral of love. The illusion created a conviction. They're really this way. The conviction led to security. Well, I can trust myself with this person because look how they are. Security fostered intimacy, and the intimacy fostered love. Here's something else they said. A husband and wife who assumes that his spouse possesses strengths that he or she doesn't think he or she possesses will have a strong marriage. That in a marriage where I assume my wife possesses strengths that she doesn't think she assumes, that she doesn't think she has, is evidence of a strong relationship. Here was their advice. Okay, here's their advice from their study. Find the most, and I love this word, find the most generous explanation. And this is the mental part. Find, come up with, be creative, think until you discover it. Find the most generous explanation for each other's behavior. And get this. And then believe it. Find, come up with the most generous explanation for each other's behavior. And then believe it. Here's a couple examples they gave. She's not impatient. She's just intense. He's not insensitive. He's just focused. Now, here's what they're saying. They're saying, look, at some point in every relationship, there's a gap. Listen to me. No matter what your experience has been, every single time you choose what you put in this gap. You do. That's your decision. And it begins in your mind. Their research says happily married couples learn to discipline themselves. We don't know how they got there. Chose to be generous in their explanation. Oh, he's just, she's kind of, but it just doesn't, it's just not, I'm just going to assume the best. I'm going to come up with a generous explanation. Let me ask you something. Where do you go with this? Naturally. Do you quickly go negative? Or do you just assume the best? That's your decision. Now, I know you got the story. I'm not discounting that. I'm just asking you, where do you go with this? Now, with that in mind, listen to 1 Corinthians 7 again. This is so extraordinarily powerful. It's over 2,000 years old, and it may be the key for some of you who have grown so far apart and think it's hopeless and you'll never have the passion. You're against divorce and you're going to gut it out, but it ain't fun. Right? And you don't like it when the phone rings and it's her. And you don't like it when the garage door opens and it's him. And it's just kind of you're just going to, because the kids are there, or you're whatever. But it's just become a cycle of negativity. Because here's what happens. When both of you are here, it's a cycle that just feeds on itself and feeds on itself and feeds on itself. And the thing about this is you get to be right almost every time. See there? I told you. In fact, come on, let me dig a little bit. Some of you actually like it when your spouse screws up because it gives you another excuse to be right. See there? I told you he wouldn't come through. See there? He's already late. See, I told my sister he's going to be late. I told my brother-in-law, you know what? Your sister, she just cannot manage money. I just found another example. Here's another bill that went unpaid. Here's another. You get into this cycle, and you start looking for it. You start celebrating it. You love to discover that they're wrong, and they love to discover that you're wrong. And you think you're winning arguments, and you may win arguments, and you may win points, but you are losing the most important relationship in your life. And it's your choice every single time as to what you put here. Now listen to this verse. 1 Corinthians 13:7 again. It, love, always protects. What does it protect? Love protects the integrity of the relationship. I'm not looking for an opportunity to put something in the negative column. I'm trying to protect this relationship. I'm looking for a way to put something in the positive column. I'm going to protect this relationship. I'm looking for a way to keep love alive. Always trust. It looks for a generous explanation. A generous, always trusts, believes all things. Always hopes. Always hopes. That is, hopefully there's a good explanation. Hopefully she had, there's just something I don't know. Hopefully he didn't mean to. Hopefully I'm not going to give up hope until proven otherwise. Always perseveres. Always perseveres. Always looks for the good. How do you do on this? Where do you naturally go? Have you and your spouse got Maybe he's good at this and you're bad at it. Maybe he cuts you slack all the time and you think, well, of course he does. I'm just next to perfect. I mean, every once in a while. And then you say, well, you know, nobody's perfect. And he said, well, you're right. And he just kind of leans into you. But man, if he messes up, if he's late 5 minutes, there's one unaccounted for $1, or he has to change his mind, or there's a change of plan, you're just like, well, there you go. And you just go negative. Or maybe, you know, she's great and you're the one that goes negative. Where do you go with this? Now, here's what I want you to hear. When you choose to assume the worst, even if there's plenty of history to back it up, every time you choose to go negative, you have contributed to the demise of your relationship. You are a participant. You're a participant. You say, wait a minute, Andy, let me I know you got a story, but I just want you to hear this one part before we go to your story. Every time, even when it seems to be justified, even when there's a history, every time you go here mentally, that gets expressed in your attitude, that gets expressed in your tone, that gets expressed in your response, your text, your email, the fact that you're not there when she gets home, or you're not there when he gets home, or that, or you know, there's no dinner ready because he was late, so you put it all back in the refrigerator, you're watching TV, and you're right. I mean, it goes both ways in every relationship. Every time you go here, you contribute to the demise of your love relationship. Even when it's justified, you become a participant. Now listen, let me tell you something about your fiance or the person you love or your spouse. Listen. The last thing they want to do is disappoint you. I don't care how bad the relationship is. I don't care what the history is. The last thing they want to do is for you to feel disappointed in their behavior, their response, their performance. I don't care who you are. No one wants to disappoint the person they're in a relationship with. Let me tell you what happens. When you go negative, what it communicates is this. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you will never measure up. You will never hit the standard. You will never get to where I expect you to be. And every time you overtly or covertly or subtly communicate that in your relationship, you push them further and further away, and they feel like they disappointed you. And in your mind, you're going, well, look, if you want to quit disappointing me, all we need to do is get these two things together, and then I'll be fine. So come on, perform, jump higher. You know, be more careful. Get here earlier. Come on, boy. Here, boy. Come on. Hey, if you don't want me to feel, if you don't want to feel like you're disappointing me, let's bring these two things together. That's not how you decrease disappointment in a relationship. One of the most powerful things you can do, and I don't even know that I can explain it fully. One of the most powerful things you can do when there's a gap to communicate that you haven't disappointed me is to fill the gap with believe the best. When you choose to believe the best, even when there's a pattern of a person not being everything you think they should be, when you choose to believe the best and when you choose to communicate that to them, here's what happens. It creates margin in the relationship. And a healthy person responds to that margin and begins to move in your direction. Let me tell you what. If you have consistently done this, they're afraid of you. If you've consistently done this, they dread the email and the response. And when he's running late or she's running late and he or she has a really good reason, they're scared to death of what you're going to do, and they put off making that phone call because they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to be made to feel like they can't measure up. Nobody wants to feel that. So that's why when you do this by choice, even when there's a gap, you create margin. And what you communicate is this. I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. Even before I hear your explanation, I trust you. Even before I hear the circumstances, I trust you. I trust you. Trust in a relationship means I accept you. I accept you. I accept you. Acceptance means you have not disappointed me. 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 Here's how it sounds in real life. Honey, I'm running late. That's okay. You just take your time. I'll be here waiting. You know, who stole my wife? What is that? All of a sudden you created margin. Honey, I forgot to pay this bill. And instead of, aha, I knew you would forget to pay it. I've been waiting for you to forget to pay it because I get to be right again. And you know what? And that's okay. I know, we'll figure it out. You've been busy. We've got a lot going on. Margin. But I'm disappointed in the margin. You know what that is? That's come my way, move my way, come my way, move my way. There's a gap. But instead of using the gap to make a point and drive you further from me, I'm going to use this gap to leverage love, and I'm going to bring you closer to me. The more gaps there are, the more opportunities I have to say, but I love you anyway. I'm not giving up hope. I endure all things. I bear all things. I hope all things. I believe all things. You come my way. Now listen, I'm not saying you don't have difficult conversations. I'm not suggesting you don't confront the realities of the relationship. What I'm saying is this. After those conversations, when everybody's had their say, when everybody's trying to work it out, even when you're mad, the next time there's a gap, you still have a choice to make. And you will choose to believe the best or assume the worst. But relationships that last and relationships that thrive are relationships where people choose to believe the best. Let me tell you about your spouse's heart. Your spouse's heart, your fiance's heart, your partner's heart is just like your heart. Our hearts are drawn toward environments of acceptance. God made us that way. This is an opportunity to draw your partner's heart in your direction, just like you did when you first met. He may come home, she may come home, but if it is an environment of you don't measure up, their heart does not come home with them, no matter how bad they may want it to. If it's, I'm coming home and I know I'm going to be raked over the coals because I forgot to pay a bill or I forgot to pick up or I forgot whatever, you know what? If I know that I'm going to come into a conversation where what's communicated to me is you disappointed me again, you didn't measure up again, you didn't get it right again, try harder next time, I'm right. I may be there with my body, but I won't be there with my heart because my heart is drawn like your heart is drawn toward environments and relationships of acceptance. Every time there's a gap, you make a decision. Will I accept or will I reject? Every single time. And couples that stay together forever have learned there are going to be gaps. The only question is, what am I going to put in the gap? And will I be willing to endure all things, to hope all things, believe all things, bear all things? Am I willing to place in that gap? I trust you until there is absolutely no other way for me to trust you. I'm hopeful there's a good reason and a good explanation. And I'm not going to reject you, and I'm not going to criticize you, and I'm not going to punish you, and I'm not going to chastise you until it's absolutely, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's no excuse. And then we're going to have a tough conversation. But when that conversation is over, I choose to put trust right there in the middle. How do you do on that? How do you do on that? Here's how Jesus summed the whole thing up. You have heard this part before. Luke 6:31. These are Jesus' words. Isn't this brilliant? Do to others as you would have them do to you. Most of us learned it this way. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, let me ask you this. How's that working for you? I mean, is this like bringing about positive change in your relationship? I know you're right every time, but it doesn't work for you, does it? What if you decided to do for him or do for her what you would like him or her to do for you? What if you discounted everything else in the whole Bible and all of religion and all of Christianity and decide, I'm just going to do this one thing in this one arena. I'm going to do for him and I'm going to do for her what I would like him or her to do for me. For some of you, this could be revolutionary. But I'm telling you, it begins right here. As soon as you get that phone call, as soon as you get home, and those trash cans are still on the street, as soon as you get home and you look through the mail, as soon as you get home and he promised but he didn't do it, go cheat. It begins right here. You make a choice. Some of you are going to make this choice on the way home today. Some of you are going to make this choice as soon as you get home. Some of you are going to have to make this choice tomorrow morning. And it's your choice. Am I going to come up with a generous explanation and believe the best? Or am I going to assume the worst? Happy couples have learned to believe the best, to fill the gap with trust every single time.
Heard me say before. Can you hear me?
Yeah. In the front row.
You've heard me say before, and I take no credit for being the one that says it, but whatever you go looking for, you're going to find. You want to look for the negative in somebody, you're going to find it. You want to look for the positive in somebody, you may have to look a little deeper, but you will find it. And how many of you know that being in a relationship, the last thing that you want to hear, what he said about none of us want to disappoint the other person. We don't get up in the morning and go, let me see, how can I get Claudina to be totally disappointed in me today? I don't have to think about that. I do that without even thinking. But the thing is that we don't want to disappoint our spouse. That's the last thing we want. But I will tell you, in those times, what he is saying is so true in that decision of how you handle it. Because when you go and you say, man, you're just stupid. You know, I know, I said, eh. But if I ask how many of you have said that before, or something along those lines, and asked you to raise your hand, I'm guessing about 50% of you or more have said something along those lines. Don't you have a brain? Don't you think? I know. I know. She's like, oh my God, I said all of those.
I'm just going to raise my hand.
But how do you think that makes the other person feel? Not to discount what you did irritated the other person, but do we want to just play volleyball and keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth? No, because pretty soon you get to the point where it's like, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to act any particular way, because I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to get them mad. I don't want them to yell at me. I don't want them to, am I right, or am I just kind of going off on a tangent?
Correct.
Of course I'm right. So, we got to be careful. I mean, out of all the sessions, I think all the sessions were good. I love that, probably the best, because it truly does close that gap of how we look at things. If you look at the positive in the other person. Listen, I have yet to see any of you walk on water. So none of you are perfect. I include myself in that. Okay? Until that day of perfection, we are all people that lack. So if you want to pick out the flaws in somebody else, I promise you that they can sit down and pick apart your flaws as well. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to encourage each other. We're here to build each other up. We're here to just be that cheerleader for that other person. And you cannot do that when you are looking through the negative microscope. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
So we know that in every relationship there's gaps between what we expect of the other person and how that person actually behaves. You know, you got married with expectations, you're dating with expectations, you are engaged with expectations. And sometimes we are disappointed. Are you setting the bar too high? I don't know. That's something you have to figure out for yourself. But if you set the bar too high constantly, you will constantly be disappointed. Okay? So you have to be careful. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not asking you to have your bar at the ground and have no expectation, because you know you've heard that, well, I don't have expectations, that way I'm never disappointed. Nothing you do surprises me. Well, that's kind of going on that negative train again. But why is that universally true? What's the root cause of the gaps? Why is there always gaps? Because of what the expectations are and how the person actually is. The microphone's on, right? You heard the question? Should I repeat the question? Should I say it in little yellow bus terms so you guys can follow me?
Wow, sounds like.
Are you with me?
Yep.
I know. See, I knew you would get it.
Well, I think I'm speaking from personal experience. I think that my expectations are based on how I view life and how I perceive things should be because of my background, the way that I was raised, everything that's been put in me my whole life. Therefore, I see life a certain way. So then we get married, and I think that that's the way it is, and that's the way it should be because that's the way everybody did it in my home. Then I marry you, it comes with your own expectations and the way that you see things, then they don't make sense to each other. And that's where that conflict arises. And that's why I love when we did the Love and Respect conference where he said, who's right? And he says, not wrong, husband or wife, just different. That was a lifesaver for the way that I saw things, even with other people. Not wrong, just different. We have to be okay with, I have to be okay with the way you see things, and you have to be okay with the way that I see things, and we have to meet somewhere in the middle because we are different.
That's good. So I have a question. When you said it's a lifesaver, was that a lifesaver? Like, were you
It was,
ready to
it
get
was,
married?
well, it was different. We were very different, and we still are. But what to be married 19 years, but things, I just did not respect a man that had weaknesses, because that's the way that I was raised. So I perceived having feelings as a weakness, and I tended to look down on that. Then when I was speaking to other people, and obviously, I've matured, I've grown, I've gotten older, and we have wisdom, that's not a sign, that's a very valuable trait. And that's something that, it's just the way that I was programmed by my family was different. It wasn't necessarily all good. I had to take the good and leave out what wasn't helping me for my life in our marriage. Because there's some things that we have to pick and choose that are not working for us now. So I was taught a lot of good things, also a lot of bad things. So I just choose the good things and whatever's going to enhance my life with you and my family. And leave those things that are not behind.
So you basically just told everyone I have weaknesses. and you have a problem with the fact that I have emotions.
I wasn't used to all the, you're very sensitive and you share your feelings. That was weird.
I share them in a manly way.
It was just an issue.
Yeah, give her a microphone. Give her a microphone, it'll be great.
No, but that was initially. Initially, I didn't know what to do with it. But,
No, really, it's okay. Wow. I just feel the need to say that. I need a minute. What?
Get it.
Mike? Were
I
you?
said, no, why do you want to be, he thinks it's good that I have a mic.
Yeah.
I have a mic.
No, his name is Mike. I have nothing.
Well, it could go both ways. It could have been something totally different. And I know that
For my safety, I put the fit.
for some, you have to learn how to work with They have strengths and weaknesses, and whatever it is that they are, or whatever it is that your perception or your expectations are, you have an obligation to think intelligently and ask the Lord to help you accept those things and look at the strengths that can be, what I lack in, you have. We were just talking about that. You have strengths that I don't have. And I'm very grateful for that.
I know, nice comeback. I'm talking this side now. All right, number 2, in a typical marriage, how conscious are we of these gaps when we encounter them? And how often would you say that these gaps occur in a typical marriage? How conscious, are you guys conscious of the gaps when they happen? I mean, let's just see a show of hands by if I said to you, if you have expectations, which all of us do, right? I mean, there are certain expectations that are real. There are realistic expectations and there are unrealistic expectations. But how many of you have had expectations and have been totally disappointed? Raise your hand. Okay? Now let me go a step further. And I know some of you are afraid to raise your hand because the other person's sitting right next to you, and that's going to start a whole debate right there. What do you mean you're disappointed? What do you mean I fell short of your expectations? You're human, right? Right? You're not perfect, right? Therefore, you are going to fail. Bottom line, embrace it. Okay? Don't walk around going, but you want to be able to accept the fact that you're a human being, and you're not going to be perfect in everything that you do. But let me go a step further. How many of you have had expectations and have been disappointed in the last 7 days? Oh, see, now you're really afraid of the other person. It's like, what did I do this week? But the thing is that we are. But how you handle that disappointment. And the first thing that you have to do is, am I having an unrealistic expectation? Am I being unrealistic? Well, if it's the fact that your trash goes out on Monday and it's Thursday and the cans aren't in, that's a reasonable expectation. You would think in 3 days you could find the time to bring the trash cans in more, honey. But, and this is all reinforcement as to why you have kids. Okay? Because then they bring in the trash cans. Right? They cut the grass. Okay? I had my kids at 4 years old learning how to cut the grass. Right? All right. Anybody else have a comment regarding the gaps? No? Okay. What do you think are some of the most common gaps that wives see in their husband's behavior? What do you think are the most common gaps that wives see in their husband's behavior? Okay, ladies, this is a time for you to thoroughly embarrass us. But have no fear, we will have our chance too. Oh, women, you have nothing to say. It's so rare that women have nothing to say. Why is that now, all of a sudden, you have nothing to say? Go ahead, Jen.
Starting projects and not finishing.
Oh. Starting project. Oh, see, half the guys in there went, oh. Okay, what else?
Just not putting any effort in.
Into what?
Anything.
Okay. The other third of the guys, oh. Yes, Flora.
They say they're going to be there in half an hour and it takes 4 hours. Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Guys do that? I thought it was only women that do that. I'll be ready in 5 minutes.
Well, not ready when they're out somewhere.
Oh, when they're out somewhere
Doing something.
and doing something. I'm with the guys. I'll be home in a half an hour. And that was like half an hour sometime zone. It's not this time. Okay? We're working on bagging on the guys, Frank. Anybody else, ladies? Yes. No, we shut your microphone off.
Because of the lessons we've learned in Ephesians, I have come to understand that women process things and think differently than men do. So men think with one side of their brain, women think with both sides of their brain. So with that said,
That was a jab right there.
No, it's not, because that's the common remark or comment that I hear from women. How can you run a multi-million-dollar company and not have a clue at home? How can that even be possible? Women have a hard
She's not
time.
talking about me, of course.
but it all comes down to the same thing, and I just tell them God created them different. They're problem solvers, and, they use their brain differently. They work with their hands. They do things different than we do. So that's how I try to.
So what's the common gap?
Gosh.
The common gap is not having common sense.
Yeah, sometimes.
Thank you for that. I think. Or a clue. Thank you.
That's the word.
No, we want you to express exactly how you feel. Again,
But that's what, I hear that a lot.
no, I'm sure I have a friend. I'm going to walk out of here so black. It's just, I know, I love you. Okay. How about we turn the tables now? What are some of the most common gaps that husbands see in their wives' behavior, Frank?
They expect us to read their minds.
Okay. They think you really. Well, see? Now, see, I saw a couple of women go. What else? They expect us to read their minds. Right? Yes.
Sometimes they always assume that you're not saying. They have different assumptions of what you're actually saying.
Right. It kind of goes back to what Claudina said. They process things completely different. We know that you say something, and then you get the look of death, and it's like, what? And they'll repeat something. That's not what I said. That's what I heard. That's what I heard. I don't know who you were listening to. I did not say that. That's what I heard. Okay? And so now all of a sudden, now you women wonder why guys are not real talkative. Talk to me. Absolutely not. I'm afraid of you. I do not want to have fun. I get in trouble every time I talk to you. It's so much easier to just sit here and just kind of glance over and and then you wonder why communication doesn't happen is because we're afraid. I know most men are just like, I'm not afraid of my woman. Oh, yes, you are. You are. You may not be afraid of her in public because there's safety in numbers. But when you go home, you're afraid. You're very afraid. Riding in a car, I can just see if you're driving and a car pulls up next to you, you put both hands on the window and go. Write out on a piece of paper. What else, guys? What else? Yes?
Expecting us to do things on their time when it's convenient for them, but...
It's kind of like a God thing, right? God's time is not our time, therefore a woman's time should not be a man's time. Right? It's like your expectation of me handling this. Yes, they have expectations. Because a woman said, if I say something, it should be important enough for you to process it and get it handled now. I didn't say, could you please handle this in a week or so? I said, can you do this? And their expectation is, do it now. Right? Is that kind of how you feel, ladies? Yes, of course it is. Okay? And being the fact that we don't have a clue, okay? And we have Scooby-Doo mentality. So every time you tell us to do something, we're like, oh, you gotta tell us like 2 or 3 times. What?
It's not all the time.
Oh, it's not all the time. No, I understand. Because you can teach a dog to go fetch, no problem.
It's a perception that women have. It's a perception.
Yes, your mic is off. You're done.
It's a perception. Because we think differently, that's how we process it. Oh, he doesn't have a clue or whatever the case may be. But
You keep saying that over
but it
and
doesn't
over.
mean that that's what it is. That's our perception. It doesn't mean it's right. It's like not wrong. It's like it's just different.
I thought the woman was always right.
So when we first got married and I would ask you to do something, what was your response to me that I absolutely hated?
It drove her nuts because she would say, are you in our conversation or are you having your own conversation? time together outside of church, right? Can you stay with us?
I'm staying, I was just trying to go with her with you.
You want me to get you a microphone? So Claudine would say something and say, yeah, I can do that, just not right this second. And that would just kill it. Because that would be that thing where you say something and then you get the look of death. You know, what exactly does that mean, not right this second?
Yeah.
That means not right this second. I will do it, but I can't bring myself to do it right this second. And she had a problem with that because her expectation was, I asked you to do something, why can't you handle it? Because it's the same thing. You know why you have that expectation, ladies? Is because that's how you treat your kids. Go brush your teeth. Not right this second. Oh, I will just not do it. So you can, you know, if the kid said that, but that's your expectation. When you tell your kid to do something, you want them to do it right then and there. When you tell your husband to do something, you have that same expectation that you have with your kids. Don't do that. We're not children. You treat us like children sometimes, but don't. I know the men are like, oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. You know, I know, but that's just part of your nurturing, mothering. Stop it. Okay, it's just. Do that to the kids, don't do that to the men. Treat the men with respect, treat them like a man, and they may start acting like a man. Okay?
Did you hear the key word today?
What?
Key word today.
Well, I have to leave them out. Just in case. But we don't. I got no problem with that. We don't want to do multiple things. You guys want to do like 3, 4 things at a time? Go ahead, knock yourself out. And then you're like, I'm going to do this. And then if I have time, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to move on to do this, but because we do quality work. You got to be careful. You got to be careful when you jump in the ring. I'm just telling you, you got to be careful. I know, but we're having fun, so that's all that matters. Flora.
I do that with my husband and my kids, but I realize that when they don't do it when I ask them to do it, they forget to. And it doesn't get done.
Does your husband forget?
Yes.
No, he doesn't forget. He just doesn't want to do it. There's a difference. He knows it's in the back. Listen, we don't forget. We just have a tendency to put it in the back because it's a priority to us.
There you go.
You know, am I lying, guys? Okay, yes.
What I did was, when my husband had a day off, his honey-do list was for the morning and the afternoon was all his.
His
And
what?
my son said, yes, my wife gives me a honey-do list.
Yeah, he was probably so tired in the afternoon. All right, so anything else? Husbands' disappointments in wives or gaps? No? Y'all are afraid now, right? All right. Why is it healthy and enriching to the relationship to believe the best about our spouses when we encounter one of those gaps? Well, I think we kind of covered that when I said, you look for the negative, you're going to find the negative. You look for the positive, you're going to find the positive. The problem is that if you focus on the negative, it gets old, folks. You know? Listen, bottom line, you chose that person. You picked them. You're going to marry him or you married him. You better make the best out of it.
Yep.
You know, too many people walk around with this attitude of, you know what, it's not working out, I'm really tired of your butt, I'm leaving. Okay? That's not the way life works. You don't quit at anything. And you have not failed until you stop trying. Okay? So when it comes to your relationship, if you just had the attitude of, when I get married, wow, maybe those words that we say, you know, till death do us part, richer, poorer, sickness, health, you know, maybe if all of that were really true and I really took that to heart, maybe your attitude would be different about how you approach mending your broken relationships. Oh, it got real quiet. This half the people are like, but that's the truth. You know, we all want to be grown up, so let's act grown up. You know, and if you've got kids, what are you teaching your kids? Hey man, when things don't work out, you just split. It don't matter. It don't matter. You know, just you go find something else. And what makes you think that finding something else is going to be better? You know? You have this attitude that things are going to be better, and, you know, these are the people that are married 2 and 3 and 4 times. You know, your chances of when you get married, and if you're married 2 or 3 times, I'm not talking to you because I don't even know your personal situation. I'm just saying, statistically, you get married a second time, your chances of failing in that marriage are more than they were in the first marriage. If you get married a third time, the chances of you failing that time is even more than on your second time. And then at some point you have to realize it's like, oh, my first wife was this, and my second wife was this, and my third wife was this, but man, the fourth one, man, she's the winner. Did you ever take into consideration that might be you that's the problem? After 4 wives? You know? Oh, it couldn't be me. They're all jacked up. Me? I'm good. You know? You're so good you went through 3 wives. And they weren't willing to work it out. You know? And man, I'm over in time, so I have to ignore you. But I'm gonna move on to the next one. Why is it unhealthy and harmful to the relationship when we choose to assume the worst about our spouses when we encounter one of those guys? Because like I said, if you focus on the negative and if you're constantly bagging on your spouse, don't you think that separation occurs? Don't you think that those conversations lack? Don't you think that time wanting to be spent together, if you're that person that dreads when the garage door opens, or the front door opens, or they're coming home, or, you know, maybe it's not right now, but if you've been that way in the past, then you really need to change your focus of your attitude and your mindset and start focusing on the positive of things, because people get tired of that. It doesn't mean that your relationship is going to be over, but you're going to go through a season of separation. And what I mean by separation is you can be living in the same house and be totally separated. Emotionally, you're disconnected. You know? And that's not the way it happens. God's intention is for your relationship to be together forever. You know, how many of you know that it says in the Bible God hates divorce? How many of you know that it says that in the Bible? Okay? Now, for those of you that have been divorced, that your sins are forgiven. God's forgiven you. You've moved on in your life. I'm not here to condemn you or convict you or any of those things. And I don't know the reasons that you did that. But in your current situation, if you are married, live by that. If you are going to get married, live by that. Okay? You better make sure that you are doing the right thing, because this is forever. Okay? Are you with me? So what do you think are the most important factors in determining whether we believe the best or assume the worst when we encounter the gaps in our spouses? What's the most important factors in determining what we believe? Yes?
I think the thing you need to express to your wife that she is an asset to you. And I've told her that's what I feel about her. She's an asset from the time I married her.
Okay. Has nothing to do with the question, but it's a good point, Bill. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. What is it? What determines the difference?
Trust.
How about your attitude? Yeah. It's all in your attitude. Whether you decide to look at it in the negative or you decide to look at it in the positive is all in your mindset and your attitude. If you're walking around all grumpy and it's like he said in the video, you're looking for a reason to be disappointed. You're looking for a reason to start an argument. Oh, I don't like to argue. No, but you love to bag, and the bagging leads to an argument. You know? I know we can say you got haters, or you got baggers, or you got naggers. You know, whatever you want to call it. Don't be that person. Be an encourager. I love what he showed. You know, it's like, you know, I'm anal when it comes to the checkbook. I know that most of you are probably like, what do you mean balance your checkbook? You know, you just go online and look at the bank total and what do you need to balance? Well, you know, banks make mistakes. And so I'm still old school where every time I get a paycheck and I go through and I reconcile my bank account, I make sure they didn't make a mistake. And if I'm unbalanced by 16 cents, I will go back and figure out why am I unbalanced 16 cents. I like to know that. So when it comes to the bills or something like that, and I'm that kind of person that's like, man, if something's not done on time, I would be that person. Well, why didn't you get? And I don't want to celebrate that. At the same time, I'm like one of those persons, and Claudina, I don't know if she was like that when we met. I think she was, but now we're two of the most punctual people we know. You know, some people are like, you know, okay, let's meet at 8 o'clock. And they're like 8:20. By 8:20, I'm like, I'm ready to give up on you and leave without you. You know, because you haven't called, you haven't texted, you haven't had the courtesy to do things. I'm like Joe Punctual. If you tell me to be somewhere, I used to be the kind of person like, you know, when I would tell her, okay, I'm going to pick you up at 8 o'clock, you know, I would leave at 7 o'clock. I live 15 minutes away. But I don't know what was going to happen between there, and I wasn't going to be late. I am Joe Punctual. If you tell me I got to be something, unless there's an act of God, I am not going to be late to something. Okay? And my expectation is for someone else, because I think that's a respect thing. So you don't respect me enough to be on time. Most of the people that I do hang out with are extremely punctual, and I'm thankful for that. You know, because if they weren't, then I probably wouldn't be hanging with them. You know, because that's important to me. But your disappointments or your undisappointments, it comes to your attitude and your mindset. You agree? Yeah. Okay, so in your notes, you have your mileposts, you have your moving forward, you have your changing your mind. I hope this series played a good part in helping you. How many would say yes? Okay. The next series, I can promise you, is going to be good, but just as a reminder, September 7th, next week, Battle of the Sexes. You want to be here. The 12th, you're going to see Cindy to sign up. Listen, we're going to get started at 7 o'clock. If you are going to bring food, my hope is that you are here, Mr. Punctuality, at 6:45 or before, because I don't want you showing up at 7:15